Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My name is Brian. I was 53 years old when my wife Lauren decided to tell me she had cheated on me. She picked an expensive steakhouse downtown for the occasion. At the time, I didn't know why she suddenly wanted a date night on a Thursday. Lauren hadn't planned a dinner for just the two of us in years. The moment I sat down, I knew something was off. She kept checking her reflection in the window behind me, smiling to herself, barely touching her food. "You look nervous," I said. "I'm not nervous. You keep fixing your hair every 30 seconds. She laughed. "Maybe I just wanted to look nice tonight. You've been putting more effort into tonight than usual." Her smile tightened. The waiter brought our meals. We ate for a few minutes in silence. Then Lauren put down her fork. "I want to tell you something." I leaned back in my chair. "Then tell me." She folded her hands together and looked directly at me, almost like she'd rehearsed it. "I had a one-night thing." I didn't say anything. A small smile appeared on her face. Then she added the part she was clearly proud of. "And I do it again." There it was, the line she'd been waiting to deliver. The line she expected would break me. I stared at her for several seconds. "That's it?" I asked. Her smile faded. "What do you mean?" "I mean that's your big announcement?" She blinked. "I just admitted I cheated on you. I heard you. You don't seem upset." I picked up my glass. "You expected me to start yelling?" She crossed her arms. "Most husbands would. Most husbands probably didn't spend the last 6 months figuring out what their wives were hiding." For the first time that night, she looked uncomfortable. "What does that mean?" "It means I know a lot more than you think." The confidence disappeared from her face. I stood up and put my napkin on the table. "Brian, sit down." "No. You're just walking away?" I looked directly at her. "You said you'd do it again." "Maybe I was angry. Maybe you're about to find out anger has consequences." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" I laughed. "No, Lauren." I reached for my jacket. "I'm promising you." Then I turned and walked out of the restaurant. My phone buzzed before I even reached the parking lot. Lauren was calling. I ignored it, because the truth was, her confession hadn't started anything. It ended something. And by the time she realized that, it was already too late. I woke up at 5:30 the next morning, not because I couldn't sleep, because I had things to do. Lauren was still asleep when I got dressed and headed downstairs. For 24 years of marriage, I'd handled most of our finances, investments, bills, retirement accounts, insurance. Lauren liked spending money. I liked keeping track of it. That difference was about to matter. By 7 o'clock, I was sitting in the office of Victor Monroe, a divorce attorney I'd spoken to twice over the previous few months. He looked up from a folder when I walked in. "She finally admitted it?" "Last night." Victor nodded. "Good. Makes things simpler." "Not for her." A slight smile crossed his face. "We spent an hour reviewing documents, bank statements, property records, credit card activity. Everything was already organized. I wasn't a man who waited around hoping problems would solve themselves. When I left his office, the paperwork was already moving. By 10:30, my phone started ringing. Lauren. I let it ring. Then again. And again. By lunch, she'd called 12 times. Finally, a voicemail came through. Her voice sounded very different from the confident woman at the restaurant. "Brian, my card got declined. Call me." I deleted it. 5 minutes later, another arrived. "Brian, stop being childish." Deleted. Then another. "The bank says there are restrictions on the accounts. What did you do?" Deleted. When I got home that evening, Lauren was waiting in the kitchen. She wasn't smiling anymore. The moment I walked in, she stood up. "What the hell is going on?" I set my keys on the counter. "You'll have to be more specific." "The accounts." "What's wrong with them?" She stared at me. "You know exactly what's wrong with them." I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water. "Victor filed the paperwork this morning." Her face went blank. "What paperwork?" "Divorce." For a second, she looked genuinely shocked. Then she laughed, a nervous laugh. "You're serious?" "Completely." "You're filing for divorce over one night?" I took a drink. "Lauren, don't insult my intelligence." The room went silent. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. I met her eyes. "It means I know it wasn't one night." For the first time since the restaurant, I saw real fear. Not panic, not anger. Fear. And that told me everything I needed to know. The story she'd prepared for me was already falling apart. Lauren followed me into the living room. What do you mean you know it wasn't one night? I sat down in my chair. I mean exactly what I said. You're making assumptions. No! I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. The moment she saw it, her face changed. Not much. Just enough. I tossed it onto the coffee table. Go ahead. She didn't move. What is it? Open it. Slowly, she reached for the folder. The first page was a hotel receipt. The second was another. Then another. Different dates. Same hotel, same room type, same city. Lauren looked up. Brian. Keep going. She turned another page. Restaurant charges, travel records, photos. Not intimate photos, just enough. Her entering a hotel. The same man entering 20 minutes later. The same pattern over and over. 8 months. 23 separate meetings. The color drained from her face. You had me followed? No. Then where did this come from? I leaned forward. You got careless. Silence. Who is he? I asked. She looked away. I'm not answering that. I nodded. His name is Gregory Bennett. Her head snapped back toward me. Now I had her attention. You know him? I know enough. The truth was, I knew a lot. Gregory was a regional sales manager for a company Lauren's friend worked with. Married, 2 kids, 47 years old, and apparently stupid enough to think nobody would notice. Lauren sat down heavily. This isn't what you think. I almost laughed. That's always the line. It wasn't serious. You met him 23 times. It got complicated. No, marriage is complicated. Sneaking into hotels is pretty simple. She rubbed her forehead. For the first time, she looked tired. Not angry, not confident, just tired. What do you want from me? She asked. The truth? I told you the truth. No, Lauren. I stood up. The truth would have been admitting this a year ago. Her eyes narrowed. A year? I nodded. You think I started looking 6 months ago? Her expression froze. That was another mistake. She thought she'd been ahead of me. She hadn't. I'd been suspicious for almost a year. The last 6 months were spent proving it. And there was still one piece she didn't know about. The biggest one. The piece I'd discovered 3 days earlier while digging through old records. A piece so ugly it made the affair look small. I looked at Lauren for a long moment. Then I picked up the folder. We're done talking tonight. Brian, no! My voice stopped her immediately. You've lied enough. I headed upstairs. Behind me, Lauren stayed silent. Because for the first time since that dinner at the restaurant, she wasn't wondering what I knew. She was wondering how much more I hadn't told her. The next 3 days were quiet. Too quiet. Lauren stopped calling every hour, stopped yelling, stopped trying to argue. That worried me more than the anger. People get quiet when they're thinking, or when they're scared. On Sunday afternoon, I got home from the gym and found her sitting alone on the back patio. A coffee cup sat untouched in front of her. She looked exhausted. We need to talk, she said. I pulled out a chair. Then talk. For a few seconds, she just stared at the yard. Then she said something unexpected. How much do you know? Enough. She shook her head. No, I don't think you do. That caught my attention. I sat down. Then explain it. Lauren looked down at her hands. 21 years ago, when I went to that conference in Denver. The moment she said Denver, my stomach tightened. Because Denver was exactly where the trail had led. The hotel records, the old emails, the dates, everything pointed there. I said nothing. She swallowed. It happened once. I laughed, a short, cold laugh. That's your defense? No, her voice cracked. I'm trying to tell you the truth. I leaned back. Then tell it. Tears appeared in her eyes. Chloe might not be yours. The words hung between us. I wasn't shocked, not anymore. 3 days earlier, I'd opened an envelope from a private lab. I'd already seen the results. Tyler was my biological son. Chloe wasn't. I'd spent 3 days deciding what to do with that information. Lauren thought she was dropping a bomb. What she didn't know was that I'd already survived the explosion. I know, I said. Her head snapped up. What? I know. The color disappeared from her face. You knew? DNA test came back last week. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, Brian, no. I held up a hand. You don't get sympathy from me. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was scared. For 21 years? I didn't know what to do. You tell the truth. She looked away. I thought I'd lose everything. I stood up. Instead, you lost it anyway. Please. I shook my head. You looked me in the eye for 2 decades. She started crying harder. You let me raise Chloe. No, my voice hardened. I raised Chloe. I pointed at myself. I was there every day. I started walking toward the house. Brian, wait. I stopped. Without turning around, I said the one thing that finally broke her. Whatever happens next, Chloe is still my daughter. Then I walked inside. Because the affair wasn't the biggest lie anymore. Not even close. And now, Lauren knew I had finally seen the entire picture. The first person who showed up was Tyler. It was Tuesday morning. I was in my office reviewing reports when my assistant told me my son was downstairs. The moment he walked in, I knew Lauren had talked to him. He closed the door behind him. You okay? He asked. I'm standing. Mom called me. I nodded. I figured. Tyler sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he leaned forward. Is it true? Which part? His jaw tightened. All of it. I looked him directly in the eye. Yes. The affair? The lies? The DNA test? Everything. Tyler looked down at the floor. Then he let out a slow breath. I can't believe she did this. Neither can I. He shook his head. No. His voice hardened. What I can't believe is that she looked Chloe in the face her whole life and never told her. That was the part that bothered him most. Not the affair, not the divorce, the deception. Does Chloe know? He asked. Not yet. He nodded slowly. She deserves the truth. I know. 3 days later, Chloe called me herself. Her voice sounded different, smaller. Can we meet? An hour later, we were sitting in a quiet coffee shop across town. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. I knew immediately. Lauren had told her, or at least enough. Chloe stared into her coffee. Then she asked the question. Did you really do a DNA test? Yes. She nodded. No anger, no shock, just acceptance. Finally, she looked at me. Are you still my dad? The question hit harder than anything Lauren had done. I answered immediately. Nothing changes. Tears filled her eyes. But I'm not. You are my daughter. She started crying. Not loudly, just enough. I didn't know. None of this was your fault. Mom told me she was scared. I leaned back. Maybe she was. Chloe wiped her eyes. Then she surprised me. That doesn't excuse it. For the first time that day, I smiled. No, it doesn't. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I'm not losing you. You're not. We sat there for another hour talking. Not about Lauren. Not about DNA. About work, life, normal things. When we finally stood up to leave, Chloe hugged me tightly. I love you, Dad. I hugged her back. Love you too, kid. As I watched her drive away, I realized something. Lauren thought the truth would divide the family. Instead, it had done the opposite. The people who mattered weren't walking away from me. They were walking toward me. And Lauren was starting to realize she was standing alone. Lauren's world didn't collapse overnight. It happened piece by piece. And the worst part for her was that nobody could stop it. Not even me. A week after Chloe learned the truth, Victor called me. Got an update. I was sitting at my desk. Let's hear it. Gregory Bennett's wife found out. That got my attention. How? Victor laughed. Apparently Lauren wasn't the only person making bad decisions. What happened? His wife filed for divorce 2 days ago. I nodded. Good. The affair that had seemed so exciting and secret was suddenly becoming expensive, very expensive. Meanwhile, Lauren kept trying to regain control. She sent emails, left voicemails, even showed up at my office once. My assistant, Rebecca, stopped her at reception. When Rebecca called upstairs, I only had one instruction. Don't let her through. Lauren left 20 minutes later. According to Rebecca, she wasn't happy. A few days after that, Tyler called. You hear what happened? No. Mom's friend group dropped her. I wasn't surprised. People talk, especially in a town where everyone thinks they know everyone else's business. Turns out Lauren had tried telling people she was the victim. That story lasted about 3 days. Then the facts started coming out. The affair, the lies, the DNA secret. People stopped returning her calls. Dinner invitations disappeared. Even some relatives started distancing themselves. The biggest surprise came on a Friday afternoon. Victor called again. You're going to like this. What now? Gregory Bennett blocked Lauren. I almost laughed. Seriously? Completely. Apparently, once his own divorce started, Gregory decided Lauren wasn't worth the trouble. The man she'd risked everything for had vanished. No dramatic goodbye, no grand declaration, just gone. That night, Lauren called me. I answered for the first time in weeks. She sounded exhausted. "Brian." "What?" A long silence. Then she asked quietly, "Was any of it worth it?" I already knew what she meant. The divorce, the lawyers, the consequences. I looked out the window of my apartment. "No!" Her voice cracked. For a second, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she whispered, "I never thought this would happen." I nodded to myself. "That's the problem, Lauren." "What?" "You spent years believing consequences were something that happened to other people." Then I ended the call, because there was nothing left to discuss. And in less than 3 weeks, we'd be standing in court. The hearing took place on a cold Tuesday morning. Lauren arrived with her attorney 15 minutes early. I arrived 5 minutes before it started. Victor was already waiting outside the courtroom. He handed me a folder. "You ready?" "I've been ready for months." He smiled. "Good answer." Inside, Lauren looked nothing like the woman from the restaurant. The confidence was gone. The smirk was gone. She looked tired, older, like the last few months had finally caught up with her. The judge entered. The hearing began. Victor didn't waste time. He presented everything: the financial records, the hotel receipts, the travel history, the photographs. Then came the messages between Lauren and Gregory. Not enough to embarrass her, enough to prove the truth. Lauren's attorney tried to argue that the marriage had already been struggling. Victor shut that down quickly. Marriage problems don't force someone into 23 secret meetings at hotels. The judge nodded. Then came the hardest part: the DNA evidence. The courtroom became completely silent. Victor placed the report in front of the judge. Mrs. Brooks concealed material information from her husband for more than 2 decades. Lauren stared at the table. The judge looked directly at her. "Is this report accurate?" Lauren barely spoke. "Yes." "And you never informed your husband?" "No." The judge nodded slowly. That answer seemed to matter more than anything else. Not because of biology, because of deception. 21 years of it. Lauren's attorney tried one last argument. He painted her as a woman who made mistakes, someone deserving sympathy. The judge wasn't interested. When the ruling came, it was decisive. The marriage was dissolved. No spousal support. A favorable asset division in my favor. Lauren remained responsible for her personal debt. It was over, just like that. Outside the courthouse, Victor shook my hand. "Clean win." "Thanks." "You know what the funny part is?" "What?" He glanced toward the parking lot where Lauren stood alone. "She lost this case long before she walked into court." I looked over at her. For a moment, our eyes met. The same woman who had sat across from me in that restaurant. The same woman who had smirked and said she'd do it again. Now there was no smirk, no confidence, no control, just consequences. Then I turned around and walked away. Because for the first time in a very long time, I had absolutely no reason to look back. A year after the divorce, I was standing in the backyard of my new house holding a pair of barbecue tongs. The old family house was gone. I sold it a few months after the divorce. I'd bought that place years before Lauren and I got married, but I didn't want to keep living in a house full of old memories. So I moved on. The new place wasn't anything fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a decent yard, and a quiet neighborhood. Exactly what I wanted. No drama, no tension, no pretending, just peace. Tyler was helping me put together a fire pit. Chloe was setting drinks on the patio table. For the first time in a long time, everything felt simple. "You're getting old," Tyler said. I laughed. "Says the guy who spent 20 minutes reading assembly instructions. That's called intelligence." "No, that's called fear." Chloe rolled her eyes. "You two sound exactly the same." That made all 3 of us laugh. And honestly, those small moments meant more to me than I ever expected. A year earlier, I thought my family was falling apart. Instead, it had become stronger, just smaller, more honest. Later that evening, after dinner, Chloe sat beside me on the patio. The sun was starting to disappear behind the trees. She handed me my phone. "You got a text." I glanced at the screen. Lauren. The first message in months. I stared at her name for a second. The last I'd heard, she was living alone in a small apartment and working at a dental clinic across town. Gregory Bennett was long gone. So were most of the people she'd once called friends. Finally, I opened the message. It was short. She hoped I was doing well. She missed the family and wished things had turned out differently. That was all. No excuses, no arguments, no requests, just regret. Chloe looked at me. Are you going to answer? I thought about it for a few seconds. Then I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. No. Why not? I looked around the yard. Tyler was laughing about something near the fire pit. The house lights were glowing behind us. Everything felt calm, because it was. Some conversations are only useful before the damage is done. Chloe nodded. She understood. A few minutes later, everyone headed inside. I stayed outside alone for a moment. The cool evening air reminded me of that restaurant a year earlier. The night Lauren had looked across the table and smirked. The night she said, I had a one-night thing and I'd do it again. At the time, she thought those words would give her power. Instead, they gave me clarity. She thought she was ending my world. What she really did was show me the truth. And once I saw the truth, I never looked away from it. I stood up, turned off the patio lights, and headed inside. My family was waiting. My future was waiting. And unlike the life I left behind, neither one was built on lies. Thank you for watching.